coming. This is Tanya Harper Rowe, and we are blessed to have her here today. And I'm going to let you tell a little bit about yourself too, but tell us about why did you get into this profession? We researched it, but I want to see it.
If I know what the answer is. I was in pre-med at Iowa and thought I wanted to be a pediatrician, and figured out that the first time I had to tell a parent that their child had some illness that was not good, it probably would do me in. So I knew I wanted to be in the medical field. I knew I wanted to be able to make decisions. I didn't want to be a technician of some sort. And so I started investigating pre-audiology, pre-law, which that was not something that was interesting, pre-pharmacy, pre-mortuary. Ruled a few out the first year and settled on audiology.
Nice.
You know, working in the clinic, working with patients. Yeah. I knew with mortuary I really wanted to talk to people. That wouldn't have worked.
Well, she's here today with some tools and tips. Hear better to live better, and there's a whole gamut that I don't think people take into consideration with hearing loss and how it can affect our day-to-day, our total health. And she's here and will educate you. And there's no way you can stump her. So any questions, anything you have, feel free to just ask. And she has a passion, and I know it's going to come through. So enjoy.
Thank you.
And this is my colleague, Bryce Phillips. Bryce started with us, 3 years ago?
Yep.
Just 3 years ago.
Yeah, just at my 3-year anniversary here.
So why don't you tell them where you came from?
Yeah, I've been doing audiology for about 5 years, and I moved out here from Olympia, Washington. My wife and I, we have 4 kids, and we have bounced around a little bit in our marriage, and we have loved the Midwest. We're looking for a better place to raise kids, and I think we found it. So, but I have a background. I did social work for 5 years before I did audiology, and the two have blended really well. So it's been a good second career.
And the weather's better here, right?
Yeah. I've never lived anywhere with a real 4 seasons, so that is kind of nice.
Yeah. So the one thing I wanted to say to everyone, number one, if you cannot hear us, normally we can project fairly well. Let us know. And if there's a question, raise your hand right away. We can go off on tangents. We will direct, but we kind of want to make it be for you. So if you have a question, if you have a concern, if we're not clear, just raise your hand and let us know, and we'll try to veer off in that direction. And I know there will be time at the end, probably for questions or anything else that you want to look at up here. We'd like to put some of the rumors that you all hear about hearing aids and amplification and that sort of thing to rest a little bit. But feel free to raise your hand, and we'll try to answer your questions as we go. Okay?
All right.
You know, are we right in front of that? Should we come this way?
Maybe.
Can you guys see it? Are we blocking the way?
Is that okay? Everybody see that?
Just do some shuffling.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
All right. So this first slide is just showing that as we age, there's a higher propensity to have hearing loss. Our next slide is going to be very similar to that. This shows a little more detailed, and the different colors that are on there are showing different severities of hearing loss. And so as you age, the propensity to have hearing loss goes up. We also tend to see more severe hearing loss with our aging population.
We also tend to see it more in men than women. For my mother's generation and my grandmother's generation, because women in that generation were typically in the home, where the men were in the military, construction work, farmers. You know, I have someone in my graduating high school class that is the farmer in the family, and her husband is the office person goes into the office. So times are changing, but a lot of times the women have less loss than the men, and especially around here in the Midwest, I don't know, with our agriculture, lawnmowers, snow blowers, home power tools, weed whackers, leaf blowers, tractors, augers, dryers, they all affect us a lot more than I see people who are from the city when I was working in Chicago. So.
Yeah, definitely a lot more noise exposure that we see here. So, yeah. This slide is, I'll let you take that one.
You go ahead.
Talking,
you go ahead.
It's just talking more about what Tanya just addressed, that different things have different amounts of sound coming out of them. As we get up into that yellow through red range, these are things that can typically have the potential to cause more damage to your hearing. We see that a lot with people running equipment, like Tanya said. We have a lot of factory jobs in this area, so we see a lot of people that are around machinery, things like that. A lot of those places are required by OSHA or other agencies to provide hearing protection. I just saw some people. We do employee screenings at our office, and I saw some employees recently, and I said, "All right, so you're wearing hearing protection regularly?" And the first 5 that came through, yes, yes, yes. And then the last 3, no.
Even though it's required.
I said, you really should consider that and probably talk to your employer about that.
And it's never too late to start. Just because I'm 58 years old, I've started wearing noise protection when I was in my 20s after doing this as a job, and I can't turn the clock back. I drove tractors, I used chainsaws, I was the only girl pretty much in the family, so there were no special privileges, and we never wore noise protection back then. But it's never too late to start. You always have hearing loss to lose.
And I had an experience when I was in grad school for audiology. I worked construction part-time, and my boss that I knew through church, he's like, "Why are you always wearing hearing protection? You can't hear what we're saying." I said, "But you can't hear what I'm saying without hearing protection."
And we make that at Hearing Associates. We have custom earplugs that we make. There's also noise protection you can purchase over the counter that are very good, and there's some that are not so good. You just need to know what you're looking for. Earmuffs that say OSHA standard, the kind that go over your ears, as long as they say OSHA or factory standard, they're good. The little squish down kind are good as long as it says 28 to 32 dB as a noise reduction rating, so it's an NRR rating. 28 to 32. You can find them at Walmart and at Fleet Farm. Probably the best place, though, to get them is you can either get them in our office, online, if it says that noise reduction rating, or the gun shop over here, not Finn and Feather, Hart Brothers. They tend to have some noise protection that's good, and Cabela's does too because of all the hunting.
The little black tubes on the tables have hearing protection in them.
Then that noise reduction rating on those, I think, is 32,
It's
31.
whatever the 3M ones are. They're
okay.
Yellow or orange 3M ones.
So, everyone asks us if they have noise exposure. Is it a permanent type of loss? It is. It affects the nerve. It doesn't affect the mechanical part of the ear, so the eardrum, the bones of the middle ear. It affects the nerve. And is this where we did before, like the little anatomy lesson, why we're losing? Or is there?
It's coming up.
Okay. Yeah. So again, just protect your hearing from noise. It's what causes us to lose understanding later on, as well as hearing, and understanding is difficult when you get older and you wear a hearing aid. We can make things louder, but we can't make you understand if your nerve is frayed or damaged. And what happens is you hear things like on the bird of July rather than the 3rd of July. Or it's a pool night out tonight instead of cool night out tonight. I'm going to do that here.
Okay.
It might be coming up. So anatomy lesson, why, you can lose hearing in 2 ways. You can lose volume, so all the
That's the one
noise
you're looking
exposure, yes.
Okay.
All the noise exposure beats on our inner ear our whole life. But an anatomy lesson is if you take that snail-shaped cochlea, which is your hearing mechanism, and you unroll it, so you flatten it out. The hair cells, there's 35,000 hair cells in about 1.5 inch space in there. And the hair cells, if you want to think about it simply, we call it tonotopic. So this hair cell responds to an S. This hair responds to an E, or a P, or a T. It's high pitch to low pitch sounds. Consonants in the English language are high pitch, 80% of them. Vowels, M, L, and R, are low pitch. So the little hair cells that respond to most of the English language is located first in that inner ear. The hair cells that are way up at that tip are vowels. Every sound that goes in our ear, our whole life, hits those first hair cells first. They get beat on. Humans tend to lose high frequencies first because of how we're anatomically organized. So that means we lose the consonants in speech first. 3rd of July, bird of July. They don't miss the vowels. Cool, pool, tool, fool, school in a noisy place is ool, 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 unless you know the topic of conversation or you're watching the person. Because pool is easy to tell the difference from cool or fool. So we all lip read. But that's why people, I know you probably have all talked to people and they say, I hear you, but I don't understand your words. That is why. They hear the vowels, they hear a few of the consonants, but the ones that differentiate words, cool, pool, tool, fool, those are all high frequency, and humans lose those hair cells first. So wearing that noise protection protects those. And later on in life, when we all acquire hearing loss just because we acquire birthdays, you don't have as much distortion in your hearing. So at least when we give you hearing aids, it's still clear. We can test people and they might have 80% understanding, so they get 80% of the words right, versus 20% understanding. It means when they wear a hearing aid, the person with 80% is going to have a more clear sound from the hearing aids. The person with 20% is going to tell us that they don't do what they're supposed to do because they're not hearing like they should. They only have 20% of their nerve function that is giving them a clear signal to the brain. And we can't fix that. Noise protection can. So.
A little bit.
Thank you.
So we put in some different things that people struggle with, kind of in offices versus other jobs, other types of job sites or factories. So in an office setting, you might struggle with speech and noise issues where you might have background chatter, you might have typing, you might have an HVAC system that's covering up some of the noise. Could be just the sound from printers, things like that. Poor acoustics. A lot of offices are open plan offices, and so noise just kind of disappears in the void, and it's hard to hear what's going on when somebody's talking to you. Technical barriers might be low quality speakerphones or virtual meetings that don't come through really well on electronics. Missing details or isolation. Casual conversations sometimes get lost. People misunderstand or disconnect things from what they're talking about, not carrying on that context like Tanya was talking about. And then you get listening fatigue. For a lot of people, if you can think of getting up in the morning and you turn the radio on, you're probably going to turn it down just a little bit because you're ears are fresh, you've been sleeping, it's the first thing you're hearing, you might want to turn that down. Towards the end of the day, people are tending to turn things up because they've been listening all day to different things, and that's exhausting sometimes for our brains. And so that goes in the office or outside the office even. So looking at worksite or industrial settings, you might have high decibel noise. So the loud machinery like we talked about, some of that can be incredibly loud. Permanent noise-induced hearing loss. Like we talked about before, long-term exposure to loud noise can cause unrepairable damage to the cochlea. And then acoustic trauma, you might have sudden blasts or explosions. I know one time, I'll tell my story from high school, but we got a dent in the igloo in the ice chest, and I went to go use an air compressor I was like, yeah, I can put air in there, it'll re-expand it, and then it blew up on me, and I couldn't hear for about 5 minutes, and I said, I don't know what happened. But anyways, that was my industrial accident that was definitely preventable. Some other things that people struggle with, and a lot of times, and we see a lot of veterans as well, and this is the number one diagnosis for veterans is tinnitus or tinnitus. It's ringing, humming, buzzing in the ears, and that comes from being around noise. That can come from some other things too that we'll talk about later. Safety risks. A lot of people with noise-induced hearing loss are missing things like alarms. I had a gentleman come in that worked his whole life in a factory, and when his wife was telling him that there was a fire alarm going off and he couldn't hear it. He didn't hear that range where the fire alarm was going off, and that can be really dangerous. Jane?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You know, for the ringing in the ear that you were talking about, is that curable?
Not curable, but treatable. And
how would you treat something like that?
Yep. So I'm going to fast forward a few more slides.
Sorry.
That's
No,
okay. That's all right.
He had to do it for
ask
me,
away. So we'll talk a little bit about what causes that real quick. So noise is the number one cause of that. Other things that can happen are vascular. So your ears require a lot of good blood flow to work properly. And if you have like a stroke or something that causes, I've had somebody had surgery and they lost blood flow to their ear and then had hearing loss afterwards. But that can cause ringing in the ears as well. Medications, some medications are what's called ototoxic, meaning that it affects the ears, and that can cause either temporary or permanent damage. That can, I know aspirin is one that if you take too much aspirin, you can get ringing in the ears, but if you stop taking it, then that sometimes will go away. And then hearing loss. It can just be related to hearing loss that if we're saying this is the frequency range, we're going low to high frequency, and you have a hearing loss that comes down like this, now you have this big gap in the high frequencies. If your brain is missing input somewhere, it's not getting the stimulus that it needs, it creates a sound, and that sound is what we hear. And so to answer your question, sorry that was a long answer, but for a lot of people that have that, it can be hearing aids. That if it's related to hearing loss, it can be hearing aids putting in that sound that we're missing. And for a large percentage of people, that can make that reduce or go away over time. There are some other treatments that we have started working with. There's a program called Linear that we work with that does a combination of a stimulus to your tongue as well as sound through headphones. And the combination works in tandem to help retrain your brain to not respond to the sound. And then we have a cognitive behavioral therapy program that we work with that helps to give you some coping strategies for that as well. So
tinnitus is pretty rampant. 2 people this week in the office came to me saying that their tinnitus was causing their hearing loss. That is not the case. Hearing loss, tinnitus is a side effect of hearing loss. So remember those little hair cells that are S's and F's and P's and T's, they're supposed to just sit there in the cochlea until a sound comes in that maybe is snake, and the S hair cell fires and the K hair cell fires. For some reason, those little hair cells aren't sitting there. There's no sound in the environment, and they're sitting there and they're firing. And that is creating a sound in your ear. It's called an otoacoustic emission. So it's a sound that is emitted from your inner ear that only you can hear. And we know these things that Bryce said, caffeine, nicotine, alcohol, salt, aspirin, chocolate, which is caffeine, lack of sleep, stress, and street drugs, heroin, cocaine, that sort of thing. We know that will cause tinnitus taken in large amounts. But we don't know. People could cut everything out that causes it. Me, I have bilateral tinnitus since September 23rd. It'll be 14 years. It started up one morning. I know the day that it started and has never gone away. And right now it is louder than anything we're saying in this room. Yeah. So it is in a lot of people. I came to work and immediately had my hearing checked because it can mean, when it's only in one ear, it can mean something more serious, something putting pressure on the nerve. Mine's in both. I had a scan. Everything seemed fine. And then I decided that maybe my 10 cups of coffee a day when I travel might be a problem. So I gave up coffee and went to hot water for 6 months, and nothing went away. I'm back to drinking coffee. It was much more interesting than hot water. But you can't just quit it for 3 days. I quit coffee for 6 months and realized how much I really was more addicted to it than I thought. I had headaches. I had all of those sorts of things. But the tinnitus did not stop. You don't have hearing loss. I do not have hearing loss. Yes, so in my case, we don't know what caused it. I do know if I go eat Chinese buffet food, mine will be roaring by the time I get home. It's the salt. It's a monosodium glutamate in Chinese buffet food. And God bless my husband, I would keep track of what I ate, trying to figure something out. And we went and had buffet Chinese food here in town, and I got in the car and I'm like, man, my ears are just ringing tonight. And he goes, it did that the last time we were here. So all my coding, what I had eaten, no clue. And then he linked it together. So now I just don't eat the buffet. I order my food without the MSG in it, and I'm completely fine. Sometimes you can find a link, sometimes you can't. But it's usually what you do excessively, either one thing, or what you do little things excessively altogether. So you have pizza one night and you might have a beer with it that you don't normally have because you went out with friends that are in town. And that morning you went and had a cup of coffee, which you normally have a cup, but then more friends came in, so you had a couple cups, and all of these things add during the day. Many times people tell us at night we hear the tinnitus. Well, number one, it's quiet. And number two, what have you consumed in the last 12 hours? So tinnitus does not cause hearing loss. Hearing loss is a side effect. Tinnitus is a side effect of hearing loss, but tinnitus can happen without hearing loss, and it can start by some of these things we consume excessively. And it takes a while to try to figure that out, and sometimes there's no link. It's just there. If Bryce and I could figure out what causes that, we could be retired in 2 weeks and sitting on a beach somewhere, So it's ask friends. A lot of people have it. We probably see a quarter, if not pushing a half, that's their complaint when they come in to see us. It's every day we see it. So.
And it can be other things too, like if you've ever been to, say, a concert or something loud and you had ringing afterwards, that was your brain saying, hey, that was too loud. And you do that repeatedly, and eventually that doesn't go away. And so there's multiple causes for that.
Who was raised here? Who grew up in northern Iowa? Okay, so we've all been on lawnmowers. And you mow the lawn on my grandfather's acreage for 4 hours, and you get off. And I remember saying as a child at 6 o'clock at night, and I finished mowing at noon, that, oh, I thought it was funny. My ears are still going, I can still hear the mower. That is short-term hearing loss. That is noise damage.
What happens when people take, little ones, because they're not gonna, they would cry, but like if you take them to the fireworks or different things like that, does that affect us even as a baby going forward?
So I had a husband and wife. They were young. They were 21, had a little one, and came in because they went out to the races. And I was making noise plugs for them because the wife didn't like the big things over her ears, and they couldn't get the squish kind down. They were afraid about those. They weren't going to get them in right. And I made the comment, as her 6-month-old was sitting in his little car seat, I said, well, what do you take him to the races with you? And she goes, yeah, we do. And I said, does he have noise protection? And she just lost the color in her face, started sobbing. She goes, I never thought about that. So that's why now you see little babies, you can get pink ones and blue ones and purple ones, same thing for them, but they're miniature sized. It's better to buy those if you have a grandchild that go over the ears, because on infants, we're making new custom plugs every 3 months because of growth.
Yeah.
We're adults, we're not growing. So ours last longer. If we make them for you, I've had mine for 8 years. I just coat them every once in a while with a little coating on it, and yeah, good question. But yeah, little ones need to have it. My kids, when I was mowing and they had to be outside with me, they wore noise protection. So.
And the size difference in ears can make a difference there too. So kids have smaller ears, like Tanya said, and some of those noises come through, and they may not be so loud to us, but we've also been around them for years. And kids a lot of times complain. I'd say the biggest complaints are hand dryers in bathrooms and public restrooms, and loud flushing toilets. I had
self-flushers.
Yeah, I've got a daughter that's 10, and she would just about cry every time we went to a bathroom in public because it was so loud for her.
And that is a true phenomena. It's called hyperacusis, meaning you're oversensitive to loud sounds and your ear just kind of blows it out of proportion. That happens when you're little. Many times they outgrow it, but it also happens as we get older and we lose hearing. Our ears can't hear soft. You need things louder. But then it becomes oversensitive to loud, so you need to push down the loud sound so it's not uncomfortable for you. Because the person will tell us, yeah, I look at my husband and say, I'm sorry, honey, you'll have to speak up. And he raises his voice, and she goes, it blows my socks off. Well, any little raise in his voice may have just crossed her hearing nerve's threshold of discomfort, because the nerve is not functioning normally. So it doesn't tolerate loud, it can't hear soft, and as soon as someone speaks up a little bit, it sounds like they're yelling at you. They're really not, but it is a true phenomena. It is actually there, it is actually painful, and we can't record it, we can't measure it. We just have to listen to our patients and start taking down the control on a hearing aid that reduces the loud sound so that it never reaches that point of discomfort. But that comes from nerve damage, which comes from noise exposure, which comes from birthdays. So again, can't stop birthdays, can't stop genetics, but where the noise exposure, because you can reduce some of this.
Yep.
Hopefully my children are doing it. I grew up and didn't protect myself at all.
Let's see where we're at there. So we talked about some of these things. Just wanted to show you what an audiogram looks like. So when you come to see us, we've got this organized. It's got low frequency on the top, high frequency on the going across this way, and then soft sounds down to loud sounds. And the pictures on there show roughly where some of those sounds fall for different things. That blue area towards the top is what we call the speech banana, that has a lot of most of our speech sounds fall within that range at a normal conversational level. And when we test hearing, we're looking to see where are you hearing at each of those different frequencies. And as you can see on the gray scale there, it gets darker as we go down. The further down you are in the hearing range, the more hearing loss you have at different frequencies.
Go ahead.
Good.
So most people, these are the high pitches right here that are the speech sounds, the part of the cochlea that's at the beginning of the cochlea that we all get damaged as we are exposed to noise. So you'll see people's hearing loss better here and then trail off out here. So it's missing all of those high pitch sounds, and yet you're hearing the vowels. But that's what most of our hearing losses look like, is some form of better low pitch, worse high pitch hearing loss.
So taken from, we're going to talk just a little bit about dementia. There's been a lot of articles related to dementia and hearing loss in the last few years. This is just talking about the Lancet, which is a UK medical commission. They did a study that said that hearing loss causes or is linked to about 9% of general dementia. And one of the single most preventable dementia risks. And with hearing aids, dementia risk is reduced to normal if caught early. I won't explain all of that. You can read that, but when we see hearing loss, like Tanya said, where it's sloping down in those high frequencies and you're not getting that input into your brain has the potential for cognitive decline. If your brain's not getting the stimulation that it needs, eventually it can forget how to process those sounds. And because of what's called neuroplasticity, your brain's very efficient in using the different parts of itself. If it's not being used for something it's intended for, it's going to use that for something else, and you don't get that back. So
yeah, and when our brain doesn't receive a signal from our eyes and our ears, which are two of our major senses in our body that get us through the day, hearing and seeing. If you're not wearing your glasses and you're not wearing your hearing aids consistently, there's part of the day your brain is not getting a signal. And to very simplistically say it is, if your brain doesn't get a signal, what's it doing? Nothing. Atrophies. You don't use your muscles, you don't exercise, what do your muscles do? You become weak, they atrophy, they're not as big, they're not as strong. That's not so much with the ear or the brain, but if the brain isn't doing something, if it's not processing something, it just sits there. So it kind of makes sense to me, keep the system functioning. Even if you're losing hearing because you've had noise exposure, keep what you have still working, functioning. There's nothing that's going to be hurt by that. You may only prolong the inevitable. You're going to lose hearing because of genetics, because of birthdays. But if you can keep the system functioning, you may prolong the inevitable. It's what got my husband in hearing aids at age 42. He needed hearing aids by 40. He grew up on a farm. They hunted. That's kind of what you did back then. And his mom died of complications to Alzheimer's and his dad complications to Parkinson's. And when this started coming out, he teetered from, I don't want to do that, I'm way too young, to when can you fit me? If he could prolong this. So it's not something that when I got out of college that I expected. I think the studies were going on when you were in college.
Yep.
But it makes sense. I just didn't.
Does your brain have to work harder if it can't hear if you're doing complications of that, I didn't know if that would lead to dementia.
You know, I think it's more, think about it like vision. When I take my glasses off, I can't read what's on the pamphlets on the table. It doesn't matter how hard I try to read it. I can't, you know, force my eyes into focusing on that. So the brain is sitting here going, no matter how hard I focus, I can't read it. Same thing with the ears. No matter how hard you try to hear, if you can't hear it because you don't have the nerve function for it, there's no hearing it. And so that your brain in that instance is not doing anything. So putting a hearing aid in there and making things audible, they may not be as clear as they used to be when you were 20, but at least making it audible so you're aware, oh, someone just said my name over there. It's processing.
I always, with a lot of my patients, I'll talk to them about when you can't hear, your brain, it's almost, if you compare it to like a vehicle, your brain's kind of in overdrive all the time if you can't hear. And you're constantly in a high gear trying to figure out and filter everything that you need out of what you hear, which you're missing things. With hearing aids, we're reducing that listening effort, which means that fatigue is going to go down. Your brain can, I think kind of what you're talking about, Jane, is that brain drain is not so intense because you're not having to put so much resources just on hearing alone. Your brain can focus on other things. I had a patient come in a couple of years ago, but he had never worn hearing aids. His wife had passed away. He came in wearing his wife's old hearing aid that had never been programmed for him and only had one side and wasn't hearing anything out of it. We got him in hearing aids and he was like a completely different person when I saw him a month later. I almost didn't recognize him. He was social, he was joking. When he came in, he couldn't hear anything. He was very silent. He didn't want to be there. He didn't know why he was there. And it completely changed for him. So
before hearing aids, my husband used to come home and he'd say, okay, do you need me to do anything else for you? Because as soon as I sit down, I'm going to be out. This might be 7 o'clock at night. He was 40 years old. And after getting hearing aids, I had him till about 10. And then we were all ready to go to bed. But he said the same thing. There's so much more of my day that I've gotten back when I don't have to work so hard all day long. You know. Yeah, and it usually takes an incident and an emotional event that causes the person to come in, because the average person waits 10 years, 7 to 10 years before when they recognize they have a problem to when they do something. What is it, 7 to 10? Somewhere in there? Yeah.
What's the why for that?
This is a why. Well, you know, I'm 58 years old. I just lost my train of thought.
Okay.
Where are you going, Tanya?
I think one of the things that was in the middle of what they were saying also, though, is if it's hard, if you are always on high alert, if you're exhausted, you tend to isolate more, which just increases. It's a circular thing where you're spending less time around people. You're not getting that.
What were we talking about?
Input. You're not getting that.
I totally lost it.
You were going.
The why for people waiting.
Yeah, why
there's
people
still some
wait to
stigma
get
around hearing devices, and people don't like to admit that, you know, that if they see it as a stigma or a handicap, it's tough. But you know, and I think until recently, there's still probably out there some misconceptions about hearing aids squawking, and you know, I can picture my great aunt. You know, I forgot my ears today, and she's doing this, and you know, now people are just adjusting on their phones and listening to football games in church on their hearing aids and everything else they shouldn't be doing. But
That's the tips and tricks.
that's later. Yeah. But I think that's part of it. A big part of it is the stigma.
I figured it out. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it's the cost too.
It is, but it usually takes the person an emotional event and a something that scares them. Okay, so my husband called me one day, had me interrupted, call her out from a patient. Either someone died in the family or something happened. He never does that. And I got on the phone. He goes, "When can you fit me with hearing aids?" Like, what's going on? And he goes, he's a financial advisor, and luckily he did it in this order. He made a $500,000 deposit for a person when it was supposed to be a $900,000 deposit. And I said, "Okay, breathe. You can just do another deposit." He goes, "That's not the point. Someday it's going to go the other way. And I've been avoiding this. And luckily nothing happened. And about 4 days later, we were sitting at our kitchen table and he was doing dishes and I was sitting there with the kids, and the 4-year-old or 6-year-old at the time was eating. And John asked him a question. You know, he's doing dishes, water's running, and Justin answered him. And John asked again. And Justin answered him. And John goes, "Justin Charles Rowe, you have got to answer Daddy." Well, now we've got big old tears. Okay. And I went, "Whoa, he did answer you twice." And he goes, "I'll be back." And he walks out. So I follow him and he's upset in the living room. And I said, "It's fine. We can help. You just have to be ready." And he walks back in and goes, "Buddy, I'm so sorry. What did you say? How did you answer Dad?" And he goes, "You do that all the time." That was it. So it took the thing at work, and 3 days later, Justin. Big old puppy dog tears. So it took an event and an emotional. That's usually what it takes. And it usually takes that long for people to come to grips with, I've got this hearing loss and I am becoming socially withdrawn. My family doesn't include me anymore, so it's happening at home. You know, when John got hearing aids, I had one of his coworkers call and say, "Hey, I'm glad he's feeling better. He's so chatty in the morning. I used to say good morning to him when we walked by and he wouldn't respond." So they thought he was stuck up or withdrawn, or, well, that hurt his feelings. You know, he didn't realize he was being rude. So be real kind when you're talking with someone, because these are things that take time, and you have to really have a heart and try to know what's going on behind the scenes, because it may not be the way that they truly are. It's just they don't know who to go to. They don't know what's happening. He had no clue that that was happening at work. And we all have to come to grips with things, you know. I went for how many years till I couldn't see the computer anymore at work, and I was just doing readers. You know, we all do it.
On the cost, you know, and this is a question that maybe all of us in here want to know. Like, when you are a senior, will Medicare, will it pay for that?
Go for it.
Thanks, Tanya. Yeah, so with
It's not an easy question. But
it's not. Yeah, so I was going to touch on this a little bit when we do talk about hearing aids, but now's a great time. When we're talking about insurance, Medicare, generally they want us to have a physician referral for that. So usually we need a primary care physician referral.
Only for Medicare.
Yeah, just for Medicare. They generally will cover one hearing test per year, and that will that's something that we want to update about every 1 to 2 years anyways. And when we're looking at cost of hearing aids, I'll just talk about some of the differences in hearing aids. Part of the cost of hearing aids is the level of technology. There's different levels of technology. We've got premium, advanced, standard, and essential. And what changes between those is all of the companies put all of their features and capabilities in the premium hearing aids. As we go down, some of those features are stripped out or reduced. And when we go down in technology, we don't always know which features are going to be the most helpful for our patients. My best recommendation is always going to be premium hearing aids, but I will tell every one of my patients to do the best they can afford, because going from nothing to something is almost always going to be better than staying with nothing. Yeah. And we have a pretty wide range of costs associated with that. There are programs like some of our civic organizations that can help with that at times. Does that answer that question for you?
Hearing aids can be anywhere from $600 each up to $4,000 each. And the cost depends on the warranty, how many years of service that you get with it, if you want to strip that in or out, batteries, rechargeables. You know, the people ask me all the time about the hearing aids on TV. Okay, those hearing aids, to put it simply, work about appropriately on about 5% of the population, because there's very, very little noise control, if any, in those hearing aids. They're right around $600. It's an appropriate price. The problem with that whole thing on TV is they don't tell you that most of you out there are not a candidate for that, because you have nerve damage and you need the hearing aid to control noise, to control wind, to control soft speech, loud speech, and do it all on its own. We've had those hearing aids that are on TV for 40 years, but there's a particular person that you fit them on. The others that he was talking about, the good, better, and best, the different levels, those are all appropriate. You have to narrow it down based on hearing loss. So we have to see your hearing loss. What's your lifestyle like? Are you still traveling? Are you just sitting at home watching TV? Do you want to talk on the phone with it? So there's a lot of things that come into play, but they can be anywhere from $600 each to $4,000 each, and it's all appropriate. Hearing aids today are good. I've been out of school way longer than him. I think you were in kindergarten when I was starting. They've come a long way. When I graduated, I was adjusting hearing aids with a screwdriver. There was no such thing as programmable, as digital. It was a screwdriver. And we used to joke, the guy who started our business used to have holes in all of his pockets, because he'd have 20 screwdrivers in his pocket, because everywhere he'd go, he'd just pick up another screwdriver in the office. We use those for everything. They had potentiometers on them. So we've come a long way. Hearing aids are good today, but they're only as good as how they're fit. Nice.
So Medicare, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, and I'm on Medicare, don't totally understand it, what you guys think about it, but if you meet your deductible, will your hearing aids be paid for?
No, Medicare will never cover hearing aids 100%, no.
Right now, there have been, so the reason the OTC bill came across was because the hearing aid
OTC means over the counter.
Over the counter hearing aid bill 3 years ago, when it came into law, October like 2021 or 2. The reason that one crossed the finish line is because they tried to get the hearing aids covered by Medicare multiple times, but because of the dollar amount to cover it for all of Medicare, because it's hearing loss is the third most common thing behind heart disease and like something osteo something. It's the third most common thing in the U.S. for seniors. They can't get the dollar amount to cover it for all.
That's pretty crappy.
We agree. We
Yeah.
would love that.
We would love for you all to talk to your representatives. Yeah.
There are supplements that do. There are some like Plan Fs and Plan Gs or whatever. I'm not an insurance person, so don't quote me on that. But there are some supplements that we can check, and we work with most insurance, and we will help people get it.
But typically, if the Medicare doesn't cover something, unless you get a particular supplement, most supplements will not cover hearing aids either.
That's so sad, because maybe that's why a lot of people avoid getting hearing aids.
And I've worked in Illinois. I work in Minnesota right now because we do a clinic up in Minnesota and Iowa. Iowa probably has the best other options to help those of us caught in the middle, because most of us are caught in the middle. Most of us don't have all this extra mad money to spend on hearing aids, especially, you know, the high-end hearing aids. But we have a Lions Club program here that does eyeglasses and hearing aids, and if you meet the financial requirement, you can get a pair of them in Iowa. In Minnesota, it used to be you could get one. Well, now you've just created a safety issue, because that person walks up to the street corner, hearing aid is in this ear, they hear a car honk, they look this way, no car, they step out, it's coming from the other direction. So they put that person at a disadvantage, even though, God bless the situation, they hoped one would be better than nothing. But for humans, when we were given two of something at birth, it works best to fix them both. You know, you don't walk out of an eye doctor with one lens. So there's some safety issues. When I fit them in Minnesota, and when I would have to only fit one, I would have to really talk to the patient about these safety issues with only wearing one. So we have options. There's hearing aid companies, because of all of this, have options where if you exhaust all options for the patient, we can call certain hearing aid companies, and they have monies set aside, you know, to help out people like that. Again, sometimes at Kiwanis in Minnesota, steps in, the Lions Club, and we have hearing aids that the price is down on them. We do payment plans. There's interest-free payment plans. If it's a medical device, you can have 12 to 18 months to pay it off. So that's helpful. But yeah, many times we're doing some searching to help people, to help get them in hearing aids.
That's the most, I feel that's the most, if we say learn anything today, it's the most important thing to know for everybody, that there's potentially help out there to get you to
And
get better.
I don't know how you feel, but as an audiologist, you know, you see these Medicare Advantage plans, and they're good. The intent is good, but most of the Medicare Advantage plans, my mom did one against my better judgment. She now cannot see her dentist she normally sees. She has to come to Mason City. She was getting eyeglasses. That was a struggle to get, because you didn't get a lot of information. You know, I would not care about the Advantage plan if they would, who they contract with, if they would give me the specifications on the hearing aid, so I could say, okay, your hearing loss, this is the best one on their list, given the power, given the features on it, but who Medicare contracts with will not give us that information. So he and I are sitting there, we don't even know what to tell people. You know, if they would just give us the specs. I don't care that you get a deal going someplace, as long as we could get you in the best product that we could get you in for that benefit.
What she's talking about is, so some of them, they don't have a benefit, but they actually work for a discount program.
Yes.
And rather than an actual dollar benefit that you get reimbursed, it's just dollars off through, like there's one where here, the closest place to go is like a Beltone and Owatonna.
I think the thing that irritated me a number of years ago when this first came out was my Mason City patients could go to Albert Lee, to a hearing aid dealership there. But my Albert Lee patients had to go to North Mankato. Why couldn't they go to Albert Lee? Because if you make someone drive, you know, I mean, that makes it a little more difficult. No one ever told me that. I'm just assuming that's what was going on. I guess I shouldn't say that, but it makes no sense. Why can Mason City people go to Albert Lee and that's where they're sent, but my Albert Lee patients have to go to North Mankato? They can't go to Albert Lee. So my biggest complaint is that I don't have the specs. Our job as audiologists, if I have someone who lives in Rochester, I send them to Mayo and say, talk to them about these hearing aids. I just had a Nebraska patient that I used to have in Minnesota call me last week and say, hey, I'm getting new hearing aids. Here's what my insurance will get me. I've been with you for 20 years. Which hearing aid should I look at? And I could highlight it. That's part of our job as audiologists. We're not here just to sell a hearing aid. We're here to give better hearing. And if that's giving better hearing, then We want to get you to the right spot. Our hands are just so tied when we're not given the specs for some of these hearing aids. They'd get more business if we could say, do this hearing aid. This is what will fit your loss. So it's very frustrating. That was a huge tangent. Hopefully that was...
But good question.
Yeah. So family members, send them in to us. We will gladly kind of give them our opinion on where to go if they're moving, what their situation is like. At least, we have veterans come in that aren't hooked up with the VA, and we guide them. How do you get connected with the VA to go through the VA to get hearing aids? Because the VA will get veterans high-end hearing aids today. But again,
I was going to tell you that.
Yeah.
That.
When I graduated in 1990, I went to Northwestern University and I did a satellite clinic. One of my clinics was at the North Chicago VA, and they were giving reconditioned hearing aids from the deceased to the veterans. They got no new hearing aids. If there wasn't in the hearing aid bank for them, they did not get them. Today, they're getting $8,000 pair of hearing aids, finally. But a lot of the veterans don't even know how to get in contact with the VA. So that's our job too.
They've got a different set of challenges.
Yeah, they do.
Through with the VA.
But at least they have a good hearing aid to get. But they do have to jump through some hoops, just like we all do with insurances and that. So, but then we just tackle it. But that's part of our job as audiologists, is guide people. Where can you go to get this that's best for you? So, and we do a lot of that,
Yeah, and we've had people come. We've had people come from other states that move here or go to other practices, aren't real happy with things. Sometimes we're able to reprogram those. We try really hard to do best practices at our office in audiology, which means that we're doing more than a lot of places are doing. And when we're doing hearing aids, that also means that it's going to be more fine-tuned for your ears than just saying, well, this is what it says it should do, good luck. So there's a lot that goes into it, and a lot of people don't realize how much goes into it. And
sometimes people have good hearing aids that come from other states, and they say, we've moved here and this is what I've got, and it's just not set right. Wherever they bought it didn't have the equipment to set it right. So Gary and Stuart, the original two owners who are no longer in the practice, when I started, the nice thing about being a private practice is that if we need something for the patient to make a fitting better, we get it. But that's kind of the mom and pop, that's the North Iowa feel. And that's why I've stayed.
And that's why I came.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, go ahead.
How do you know if you need your ears cleaned or if you need hearing aids?
Come see us.
Yeah.
Many times people will come in and they've been waiting for a year and a half, and they come in and all they have is earwax. So we clean out the earwax and we check their hearing and tell them to go home, and we'll see them in 2 years. But they've fretted about this for months and months and months, and it's something that we could just remove. Not always. Sometimes we find a hearing loss and we drop a bomb. I had a gentleman last week tell me, you have just dropped a bomb in my lap. I wasn't ready to hear that. I need to think about this. Can I schedule with you in 3 weeks? Gives him time to think about it, reassess his situation, regroup a little bit, and then come back. And that's completely fine. This is a big decision. And there's too many places out there that you get all this information, and how do you know what's right?
Tanya was talking a little bit about this, but when we used to have hearing aids that were adjusted by screwdrivers, we might have only had maybe 2 or 3 adjustments in them, which meant you had one screwdriver that adjusted 3 screws. And
you said, how does this sound as you turn that screw in the hearing aid, and they said, there, stop there, and that's how you set it.
Yeah. But now with hearing aids, I didn't start with those, so I feel very lucky to
Thanks.
have. When I was in kindergarten, I was still learning things. But anyways, with hearing aids now, we have hearing aids where each of these frequencies that are up there with the arrows might be a different adjustment that we have to make for each hearing loss. And it's not always exactly the same between ears. And so when we're doing a hearing aid fitting, we're not only are we doing that, we're also measuring ear canals to see how does sound resonate in your ears, and then we program that into the hearing aids to make it very specific for each ear. And some of the hearing aids might have between 16 and 24 adjustments that we have to make for each ear, and then we have to get it right where it needs to be. And so
it's much more precise for your loss by the way that we do it. It takes a lot longer, but you don't come back half as much. Typically we can get you in the ballpark of where you need to be, and then we just have to listen to you. Part of our job is listening also, because what looks good on the computer, if you come back and say, oh, it's really sharp, we have to reduce some things, and then we look at the computer and go, that's not very pretty for your loss where we think it needs to be. But if you're happy and it sounds good, you might be having that recruitment, that over-exaggeration of sound, so I've got to turn things down. It may not always look pretty, but when we get you to the point where you say, that's good, I'm going to wear them all day, that's our goal. Our goal is you put them in the morning and you take them out when you go to bed at night. And if they're in the drawer, please, if you have any family members with them in the drawer and they came from our office, please send them back in. We do not want them in a drawer somewhere. Hearing aids today are too good to end up in a drawer.
That usually means that something wasn't right and we need to reassess.
We need to fix it.
Yeah.
Can I tell you a little success story?
Please.
So I have had hearing loss my whole life. I'm an amazing lip reader across the room whenever I can read lips. Well, then COVID hit, and I'm a teacher. And I started to realize how much I relied on that. And I had a difficult time during that year and a half when we had to wear masks and that stuff. So then it kind of made me realize how much I was relying on it. And then, I don't know if it's because of COVID or whatever, but I felt like my hearing loss was getting stronger. And I found myself getting more irritable, and then because our classrooms started to get bigger with more students and more technology noises and all of that stuff. So finally my daughters were like, Mom, it's time, you need to go in. And I'm like, I just don't think I can do this. And one of my friends had posted on Facebook that they had come to your office, and I'm like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. So I saw Christine in your office, and I'm kind of an enigma of sorts. I'm the opposite. I can't hear the low sounds, so I'm like the middle to the low. Both of my hearing aids are different sizes, but getting the hearing aids, I don't think I realized how much I was missing. Like at meetings, there's things that I didn't know was happening. I don't have to come out of the kitchen to hear a conversation. I don't have to ask the people in the front seat of the car to repeat for me. I feel like I'm more part of the world now that I have them. And I'm 58, just turned 59, and I was thought I'm too young to have hearing aids. But like it totally, honestly, and I just had my year anniversary with them. Like I will go back home and be late for somewhere if I forget to put them on, just because it's made that much difference.
Good.
They had to be sent away for whatever, like for my year thing, and those 7 days they were gone were like, I felt like I had lost a friend for 7 days.
Well, and remember, we do have loaner hearing aids if you would need them. So.
And I survived. It was summer, so
right.
I was okay, and I was home recovered.
But that's another thing we do in the office is we have loaner hearing aids for our patients who have to send them in, so you're not without something. It may not be exactly.
And Dr. Christine for helping let me see the other side.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't remember where we're at.
Do you want to show them the one about the
That one?
Nothing. Go ahead. It's later. Go ahead.
Okay. So the American Academy of Audiology talked about signs of hearing loss. Since we just talked about that, difficulty understanding speech in noisy environments, feeling like people are mumbling or unclear, saying things like, I can hear but I can't understand, are pretty common. Family and friends often need to repeat themselves, difficulty understanding someone if you aren't looking at them. Your family says your TV or radio is too loud is a pretty common one that we hear a lot from not the patient, but whoever's with the patient. Increased frustration during conversations, and then avoiding social situations because it's hard to hear.
So they withdraw.
Yeah.
You just go sit in the corner and don't talk.
Yeah.
So.
But some of the questions that we ask about are exactly those. We go over what a sound void questionnaire. A sound void is sometime when you're either not hearing or not understanding something. And we're often asking if any of these are happening frequently, sometimes, or rarely. How often do you have difficulty talking on the phone, watching TV, in restaurants? How often do sound voids hamper or limit your social or personal life? How often are you needing repetition or having difficulty with background noise? Hearing women or children's voices, hearing but not understanding someone. How often does it feel like people are mumbling? And then another one that people often don't think of, but how often does listening for a long period of time make you feel fatigued or exhausted? That's that listening effort that we were talking about, and listening fatigue that people get. So.
Or if you or your family member have gone out for supper with friends for a year, once a month, and now your spouse says, I don't think I really want to go. Why? We usually have a good time. Well, it could be that the sound void is like it's a void of, so when you're not hearing the high pitches, you're not hearing S or P or T. So top or stop or pop, you hear op. That's a void. That first letter that you're not getting is the void. And people would just withdraw. They don't want to go do those fun things. Go ahead and go, honey. You can go ahead and go. I just don't feel much like it tonight. Well, because it's embarrassing if I'm not understanding. If I ask a question that someone just talked about, it's a lot of work. I'm tired. It's the end of the day. So sometimes when someone stops doing something in your family that they have loved to do, that might be an indication that they're having some hearing impairment. It's too much work to do it anymore. It happens a lot. Just some things to look for in your family members or in yourself. Am I stopping doing what I like to do? Big one in our office is I don't talk on the phone anymore. Well, why do you not talk on the phone anymore? Your family lives out of state. I just don't. I don't like talking on it. Well, it's because you can't hear on it? Probably. Because that's a mode of conversation with your family. It's a connection. And hearing aids today can help with that. So that's what the sound voids are. When you're having to make up so much of the word because you're missing those sounds, it's just a lot of work. It's a void in everything that you're hearing.
Can I interject just one
Yeah.
thing really quick? If you or you know someone who's really struggling on the phone, that can still happen even with hearing aids sometimes. And even if you don't have hearing aids, there are two things that we have that are absolutely free for after we do a hearing loss and certify that you have a hearing loss. One is the caption call phone. That's absolutely free. You don't even have to have a landline, just Wi-Fi, and they'll set you up a number. That's what's going on the right side of our table there. And then there's also a brochure up there for an app. If you have a smartphone, there's an app called INNO Caption, INNO Caption, and it will caption your cell phone conversations. So it's just one more opportunity. Another sign out in the wild of hearing loss is people in busy places on speakerphone.
Mm-hmm.
that is a sign of hearing loss.
And this phone here that he was talking about is also for vision impaired. It was designed for vision and hearing impaired, and it's free. We need to, so some of the things that we do that helps people get into devices of some sort, this is free. We have to prove you have a hearing loss. We send your audiogram into the company. They come to your house and set it up for you and train you. If it breaks, they replace it or repair it for free.
At your suggestion, I got one, and they are great.
Thank you.
For both vision and hearing.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah, they can slow the print down. They can make the print bigger. Can they make it a black background with white print or vice versa? Do you remember? Did they tell you that? I don't know if they can do that.
It can get wicked loud too.
Yeah. So
Does it have to be on a landline?
no. So if you have a cell phone, they have what's it called, a receiver that they can make, if you're home, they can make your cell phone message go through the receiver and it still prints out on this phone, and you can use a speaker on this phone. Or like Alex was just saying, on your cell phone, if you don't have a landline, there's an app that you can put on your phone, and whoever calls you, it'll print out what they're saying to you so you can read it on your phone. I don't have anyone doing that right now that I know of.
So if you want an extra line, they will give you a line for free if you have Wi-Fi. So be like, here's my landline, and it'll only ring to that phone. You can't like put phones all over the house, but they'll assign you a number that's for that number if you don't have one. I mean, it's a wonderful program. Yeah.
And the price is right.
Right.
One important feature of that is if a doctor calls you and gives you instructions,
Yeah.
they're printed out at the time, but if you don't happen to catch it, you can go back and it will be replayed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you have so you have a landline line and you have voicemail on your phone plan then, right?
No, it's just while she's talking on the phone.
Oh, okay.
You can
Yeah.
save the conversation.
Okay.
I was just gonna say that I have a patient who does a lot of phone interviews, and she will save them and go back to her phone interviews as she's writing articles and things. And
Good to know. I didn't
Yeah.
know that it did that, so thank you.
Yeah, I have a grandpa that lives in California, and despite having two grandsons who are audiologists, refuses to get hearing aids. So I called and said, Grandpa, I'm going to set you up with this phone. It is free. And he loves it. Yeah. There will be times where we're talking to him and I can tell that he's reading because he's mumbling the words, and he says, oh, that's what you said. And so, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, and we
he
do
really
need to
enjoys
test the
that.
hearing for that. It makes it the best because then we can give the company exact thresholds. So it is set up amplification-wise exactly for you. So other people can still use it. I used to use my grandmother's. You know, I just adjust the volume on it because...
Tanya just turned it up all the way so she could talk from the other room.
Right, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so that's also something. So spread the word. We can get you in contact with that. It's just such a... use this as a source of information, and our receptionists are really good. Many times they can answer your questions, and if they can't, they'll say, we'll call you back. We're going to go ask one of the audiologists, and someone will get you called back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might be good information, Andy, for us to put on the site too, for people to know that, to reach out to you guys for that phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're going to come in for that and you need a hearing test, call your primary care doctor, get a referral faxed to us, and then Medicare covers your hearing test. So, okay.
Yeah. Go for it.
So, like he said earlier, we recommend once you hit the age of 40, you have a baseline audiogram. The physicians in town now, because we've done a lot of talking with them, are starting to refer their patients over here who are 40, 42 years old to just get a baseline hearing test. If their hearing is normal, we say every 5 years you need a hearing evaluation. Once we find a hearing loss, we want you to come every 1 to 2 years. Sooner if you feel like something is shifting. Okay? And being on Medicare, he said earlier, Medicare usually covers one test a year. If you come in and say, Tanya, I think my hearing is changing. I don't know if it's hearing or understanding or both. You can get another referral, and when you think something is shifting, Medicare will approve another hearing test if that would come up. It doesn't happen often, but when it does.
Medical necessity.
Yep.
Yep.
And when you feel that that's changing, they will cover another one.
You know, so hearing tests every 1 to 2 years. Once you find a loss, if there's people in here who've never had a baseline hearing test and you're over 40, you need to come in and get a hearing test. If you're not on Medicare, we bill insurance. So, and you don't want to have a screener. You want a full audiologic evaluation. So that's the beeps and tones for all of the pitches. We do speech testing. So we determine what your understanding is. So it's something like, say the word third, and we see if you say third or bird. And then we calculate what is your percentage of sound voids, essentially, or what percentage of words are you missing. But you want a complete audiologic evaluation. We want to check the nerve, we want to check your understanding, we want to check the mechanical part of your ear, and then we go from there.
You said something about Medicare might cover it if you got a doctor referral for that test. How much is a test?
$180.
$159 for a full test. That's that's before we bill insurance. And usually, if somebody has that plus a supplement, they end up owing it's $6 and change, or $20 if you don't have a supplement. But we do the hearing test plus what's called a tympanogram, and we also do bone.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part on here talks about coming to see an audiologist. A lot of offices that do just hearing aid dispensing don't charge for hearing tests because they can't. And part of that is they're only doing hearing tests to fit hearing aids. We are doing diagnostic hearing tests so that we can diagnose what kind of hearing loss people have. So,
and if there's a need for a medical referral.
Right.
Yep.
So people come in many times and will say to Bryce and I, well, I know you can't give me the results. Yes, I can. We can tell you what we think it is. We're looking for tumors. We're doing all of that. That's why we have our doctorate. When we say we have a screening, because sometimes we say, come in and get your hearing screened. That's not charged for. So the places that say free hearing test, they legally cannot charge for it. They don't have the degree. When we do a screening, it is free, just like theirs is, but we don't do that very often. Many times we work for every physician in town. If they see something in their office and they refer to us, we are doing everything to try to figure out medically what is going on. So that's our first job. That's why we went to school for 8 years, is the medical aspect. My favorite part of work is when can I help somebody? So it's the hearing aids. Some audiologists like to just do diagnostic. That's not me, and that's not Bryce, which is why we're here today. There's some that just all they want to do is test. I enjoy working with you. I enjoy figuring out what do you like versus what do you like, and it's going to be different, and I'm going to have to set this differently, and we have to communicate. That's just my personality.
and she's ornery.
Sometimes.
I kind of like to know if these guys have any, if you have any questions, anything that they wanted to ask, or anything that they don't understand.
Yeah. Shoot.
Not everybody talk at once.
One at a time, please. One at a time.
So just go to the next. We have 10 minutes, right? 7 minutes?
We do in the back of the folder that Johns Hopkins study on dementia back there. It's called the Achieve study. And then also there's a sheet that says because you care, and because you may not be that person with hearing loss. You may be the one talking to the person with hearing loss, right? and just some good strategies, like don't just repeat yourself, but rephrase. And yeah, I mean, you talk about this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
one thing my husband does, and I know it, and you'd think I would learn. You know, our household was busy. We had 3 boys, 2 dogs, a hedgehog, you know, I mean, things are going crazy at our house. And I would talk to the dog, talk to the kids and say, do you want beans or peas for supper? And by that time, my husband's thinking, whoa, this one must be for me this time. And he goes, what for supper? If I'd say, John, do you want beans or peas for supper? I would have gotten an answer. I lost my train of thought again.
Stating their name before you.
Yes, so communication strategies.
Getting attention first.
Getting the attention first. It doesn't work to say, do you want beans or peas for supper, John? Because then he goes, what? At the end. Say his name first. And reverse what you're saying. So beans and peas, my husband, if I say, do you want beans or peas for supper? He'll go, what for supper? Do you want peas or beans? He gets it every time. So it's something how the S in beans and the P in peas come together that he doesn't understand. He's got 40% that he doesn't understand on testing. And inevitably, if I say beans or peas, he doesn't get it. If I say peas or beans, gets it every time. It's just somehow that his nerve is distorting those letters put together. So keep an eye on that. If you're living with someone or you have friends or family, switch things around. It doesn't help to just keep saying the same thing over and over again. For supper, a vegetable. Do you like peas or would you rather have beans and put something in between the two? You're saying the same thing, but there's something about it that their nerve is distorting that you say it the same way again, it's going to distort it the same way. And they're not going to get it. And then they get frustrated.
And I love that communication strategies, though, because you care one. I talk to people all the time. What hasn't changed for me in between audiology and social work is the people that we're around the most, we communicate with comfortably, and comfortable communication is terrible communication. Mm-hmm. That means that we're talking room to room, we're talking far away, and what the communication strategies tell you are don't talk room to room, close distance, look at people. If you're in noise, try and reduce the background noise. And I give this to people all day long, whether they have hearing loss or not, because it's just good communication in general.
Well, and I've taught my husband how to teach me when I do something wrong, because you'd think I would know how to do this after this long. But I walked to the formal living room the other night and said something. We're canning. So I said something about where something was for the canning equipment. And I heard him in the kitchen go, you know I cannot understand you when you are in the other room. I will wait till you come back. Now, this is what I've taught him to do. And I walked back to the kitchen and I said, sorry, this is what I asked. But he used it on me. So you say, typically I tell people to say, if Bryce and I were going to go out for supper, and he'd tell me we're going out for supper, and then he'd walk away, what I would say is, I heard you say we're going out for supper at the Happy Donkey. But when you turned and walked away from me and stuck your head in the closet, I understood nothing else. Don't say I didn't hear you, because you did. It's a lie. You heard them. You didn't understand them. So I heard you say and repeat what you heard, but when you, whatever action they did that made it difficult, when you did that, I didn't understand that part. Does 2 things. It lets you say, God darn it, would you stop doing that without saying that? And it makes him know, what did he do wrong? He walked away. He might not even realize it. Many times at home, you're busy. You don't even realize you're doing it. And he knows what he has to repeat. Sorry, Happy Donkey, 7 o'clock Friday night with the Joneses. He doesn't have to repeat everything. It creates less frustration on both ends, and John trained me again, made me think, okay, so I walked into the living room later and I came back up and I go, hey, wasn't going to talk from the family room or living room anymore because he can't understand it. It made me think about it. But he also didn't ruffle my feathers because he didn't say, darn it, would you stop doing that? You know I cannot understand anything that you say. and sometimes he adds honey in there. I'll wait till you come back. So it's things you can do. I mean, you can do it in the grocery store. I had a little cute 15-year-old with 4 months of service at Hy-Vee East. And she said to me, your bill is $19.95. And then I said, pardon me, I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. She goes, your bill is $19.95, and turned away. And I said, okay, with that baby crying and 6 checkouts going and people are talking, you know, unless you look at me and tell me what my bill is, I'm going to assume that it's free. Every time I go in there now, I go to her, she goes, oh, your bill, it's $42.47. And she stares at me. So either she thinks I'm hearing impaired or I taught her something, how to communicate. But too many times people are in their phones. You know, I'll look at my kids and say, I will wait to say anything to you until you put your phone down.
I have a quick question. I think there's some grandparents in the room. Is it true that, yes, congratulations, Tom. Is it true that that AirPods are causing hearing loss, and why are the AirPods more dangerous and damaging than traditional, like what we grew up with, canned hearing headphones?
So I did a study on the Apple earbuds when I was in college, and what happens is if you go above 75%, so that 75% to 100% volume range, pretty likely you're going to get some hearing damage from that. And as opposed to the old can style, we're putting something in the ear and there's no venting there. We're pumping all that sound in our ears, which sometimes is going to cancel out other noises, but we tend to listen to it louder. And if people, a lot of younger generation will do one so that they can still have an ear accessible. If you're only hearing in one ear, you need it twice as loud to be able to hear it. And so we're a lot of times seeing hearing loss, then it kind of produces a noise notch where people are getting a lot of that noise exposure. So.
I've also heard it explained that when you wore the can hearing headphones, that sounds would bounce and not always go all the way to the eardrum.
It's just simply closer to your eardrum than the ones that go over your ears.
Yeah.
But, you know, and we used to say before the AirPods, you know, grandparents would want to get, you know, my kids used to plug it into an MP3 player and put the little piece in their ear. I got them the pieces over the ears, and I'd sit down by them on the couch. And my rule was, if I can hear your music and I'm sitting beside you, it's mine. Too loud. So I'd sit down and then they'd go, is it yours or is it mine? You know, they get a little snippy about it. Well, now you can't even do that because you've got the AirPods. My kids do not use those kind that you used to plug in and put in your ear. So you can't even hardly judge how loud they really are. They really should be able to communicate with you and not have to take one of the headphones out, take the headphones out is kind of the rule of thumb now, I think. I mean, you did the study on it. Does that work if they keep it down enough?
I didn't study that part.
Oh. You know, or there used to be something called, and I think there still is for the kids who need the actual cord that plugs in. It's called Kids Safe. Is that still around?
Yep.
Okay. Where when they plug it into whatever player they're listening, the computer, no matter how loud they turn that computer, the headphones will only go up to a certain level that keeps it below the dangerous level. So if you're a grandparent and you want to buy a pair of those for your grandchildren, get ones that say Kids Safe, because then they think they're turning it up and they're only getting to a certain point and it won't go up any further.
There's also settings in smartphones now that will warn you when you get to an unsafe listening level, and you can set it so that your phone won't go above that amount.
And that takes someone who's technologically savvy, and I would need to be taught that. So you have to ask people. So, you know, sometimes there's apps that can do that. It's you got to get out of that fear of the cell phone thing. And just gradually do one thing at a time. There's a lot of stuff out there like that with me not having kids at home anymore that you're dealing with and you're dealing with that I don't know. I don't deal with that. I know I just dealt with 3 days ago walking to the neighbor's house. They're 26. He was wearing AirPods mowing the yard, and I walked over.
It is not hearing protection.
It is not hearing protection.
Yeah.
So not only was he driving the lawnmower, but he had cranked his music because you've got to overcome the lawnmower.
Noise canceling is not the same as hearing protection.
So how many decibels would you say, and for what period of time? Because like my watch will tell me when I'm in a loud environment, but I have to set that at what point I want it to be allowed.
Yeah.
90?
It's like 85.
It's
It was in one of
80
these
some
slides.
decibels. It's 80 some decibels
that
for
one.
so many hours, and then if it's over 90 decibels, the hour count goes down. And a lawnmower is
For it.
Because of OSHA and NIOSH, because
Yeah.
they're looking at occupational. So I'm in a place for 8 hours. How long can I withstand this or
Safely.
should I safely be exposed to this?
You know, that's why I use the rule of thumb. Kids would drive up and their music is playing and their windows are up and I can hear the music. Sorry, my kids are not going with you. And
Tanya was the cool mom.
well, they never said anything, but Shay turned his music down. I had a little chat with him, with the boys, before they came out. And about 10 minutes later, my 2 children, the 2 oldest boys, are like, "What did you say to Shay?" On the cell phone. And I said, "Why?" Because he's turning his music to a comfortable level. He's not turning it up. And the only common denominator is you, Mom. Well, we just had a chat about noise exposure. And I told him I had eyes all over town. So, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, and we've had people even call us and say, "Hey, I'm getting my child this for Christmas. Is this safe? Because I don't want to give it to a grandchild and then have my children say," I mean, I'm thinking about that now with 2 little grandsons that I have. Now, I'm reading things to make sure that it is safe auditorily, the toys. Ironically, that's the son who wondered what I said to his friends, so the dad. So yeah, call us and see, you know, if we'll give you an opinion if we have it.
Yeah.
And we may have to do research on it, but again, we're a source.
Yeah.
This might be off the balance of what you're trying to teach us, but I know a lot of elderly people that have dizziness and balance issues. Is that more to do with the inner ear, and is there something that they can do? It's not a hearing problem that I know of, but it's falling and
Yeah, when
dizziness.
sometimes
That's
it
a
can,
good question.
Yeah, sometimes that can be related to blood flow. With aging, blood flow is not as good. As we age, if you're standing up, it takes longer for blood to get to the head. And that sometimes can be a problem where people will stand up and then they feel kind of woozy. And after a few seconds, that blood's caught up and they're okay. That can be one part of that. When we're talking about the balance system, there's 3 things that you need for balance: vision, proprioception, which is kind of where your body's joints are in space, and then vestibular, which is next to the cochlea. It's in the inner ear. You need at least 2 of 3 to work well. And if you think of someone aging, their joints may not be working as well, vision may not be as good. Those are all going against them in just being able to know where their body's at in space. So, yeah.
But we are a starting point with people with dizziness or vertigo, because it is inner ear. One part of those systems, like he just said, is in your inner ear, and that's our job. So we are checking. I saw 3 today. Their complaint was vertigo. So we're doing a indirect test by testing the hearing, looking for an asymmetry, something that is not the same from one side to the other. And we can't reach in and take fluid out of the balance system and check it for infections or anything, but we can check the hearing. And many times if there's something going on in the inner ear, if we see something happening on the right side with the hearing, sometimes that leads us to point to the right-sided balance system. Because if your balance systems on both sides of your head aren't working the same, they're off balance. And guess what you do? You wobble. So we're a starting point. You know, we have a lot of times people coming in and their chief complaint is vertigo or dizziness or balance problems. And so we're trying to either point to something, yes, your left ear seems to be involved, or rule a bunch of things out. So either way, you'll get an answer. It might not be the solution, but we might say to your physician or your ear, nose, and throat physician, we're not seeing this, this, or this. You don't have to worry about those things. And then they can take the next step. But many times we are one of the first people that see you because the inner ear is part of the balance system. So, and usually when it's the inner ear, people describe themselves as moving, or the world is moving, where unlike when it's with your blood pressure or diabetes, your sugar levels, it's more imbalanced. It's more kind of wobbly. But we are a starting point, and we'll even see people if they're just off balance, if need be. That's not a problem, but we're probably going to rule things out and then pass you on to the next person you need to see. But yeah, we do a lot of that testing. And we do some advanced balance testing. You do, I don't.
We don't.
You don't
We've got two other providers that do advanced balance testing where we have, they schedule about, is it 2 hours?
Yeah.
So about 2 hours that you go through kind of a battery of tests that tests balance in different ways.
Test that part of the inner ear system.
Yeah.
So we do have that. You have to go through our hearing test and probably see another physician, and then they'll send you back for that. But so that is a good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions?